It's time for the Nugget Labs to get a little security smackdown. Let's continue on in our Phase 6 lab, which I renamed DHCP Services because that's really the only service that we configured in the previous one, and Security, which is what we're going to pick up with today. We've got DHCP completely configured for our network. The different VLANs are receiving IP addresses from switch 1. So now let's move the lab back over and pick up where we left off in the security world. Here's all our DHCP you got it. And then down here is the security restrictions for the branch office. These being generated by the requirements from the beginning lab. Something I want to add here is don't go gung-ho on security restrictions without the organization backing you. It sounds obvious, but let me just give you a scenario that I ran into. This was about 2 or 3 years ago. It's funny because I was actually at a client site yesterday, and they were like, we were talking about bandwidth management and Wi-Fi, and I said, all it takes is someone, with Kazaa and wireless or something destroying you. And it's funny because the two guys looked at me and they go, Kazaa? You're going old school on us. They're like, you're going to start pulling out stuff like Morpheus and Napster and stuff like that. I was like, wow, I didn't know Kazaa and LimeWire and all that were so old school. But apparently I'm slipping into the old school on my peer-to-peer file sharing. So nonetheless, I was giving an example which was about 3 years ago. One of the companies I was at, we were just slow as I don't know, things that are slow, and we were trying to figure out what's eating up the bandwidth. And long story short, we determined it was somebody that was using Kazaa, just downloading a massive file, I'm assuming a movie or something like that, using peer-to-peer file share. So I was like, let's smack that down. And we went, immediately went in there, set up a quality of service policy to throttle essentially peer-to-peer file sharing down to about just above a 9600 baud modem, to where it would barely connect and you could get virtually no throughput from it. And it worked. It was great, and the internet was extremely fast. And long story short, the owner came and smacked it down because he was the one downloading the movie. It turned out, we never even knew it. He immediately said, that's not our culture. We don't want that. All that. Like, I can't believe you went through with those security restrictions. So the point is, even the stuff that you think you're like, come on, this is good, you need to have a meeting with management and say, look, these are the things I've noticed, to make sure it's not management itself that's doing all of the, we'll call it gray downloading from the internet before you put all your security restrictions on. So that being said, management has signed off. Let's review our security restrictions and then we'll lay them out. We've got, first off, voice VLAN should only be able to access, meaning everything else is restricted, the Nugget Labs corporate voice subnet. So VLAN 64 should be able to access the voice subnet at the corporate office, so we can do voice over IP over the WAN, and then access to the internet. VLAN 66 should be able to access, meaning all else is restricted. We've got one server, full access to DCO1 and DCO2. Here are their IP addresses. And filtered access to the web server. There's a web server on the server VLAN on port 2180 and 443. So that's FTP, HTTP, and SSL or HTTPS, depending on what verbiage you use. That's going to be the web server, and then full access to the internet. But everything else should be restricted, that they should be able to reach. Finally, we've got the public Wi-Fi. VLAN 69 and public, we've got the private lab that they allowed us to have an on-site lab at their premise. That should be only able to access the internet, to where everything else is restricted except the internet. Now, I will say these scenarios that I created here are kind of challenging. And the reason why is it's not very book-like, but it's very real world. Meaning a lot of times books, when you're reading books, they're like, okay, here's how you do something like this. Here's how you just allow access to this port or that port or that port. But then they don't add in, oh yeah, internet access. That's something we have to have too, right? So how do you allow access to everything and then some things, but then lock down others? It's just that, and some of you may say, well, that's no problem, but for most people, it's like a mindset shift where they're going, oh, well, this access to everything, but yet nothing, this all else is restricted, kind of throws them. So let's work through this using access lists, and this is going to be fun. Access lists are always good. And let's go through the mindset. First off, I'll start off on VLAN 61 or 64 and talk about what we have to have there. So VLAN 64 at the branch office is our voice VLAN. So here's our IP phone sitting right here. And what the requirements have said is, allow this subnet to access the voice VLAN at the corporate office, which is 10.1.1.0/24, and allow them to get to the internet. Now, why would you need a phone getting to the internet? There's a lot of reasons, but I would say one of them is there's actually a lot of services on the internet available for phones, IP phones. For instance, there used to be one called Burby. They've been acquired and renamed, but it's still out there. It's a set of free phone services which gives you like weather reports, news updates. It's kind of like iPhone apps, that kind of thing. Kind of the same thing. So if the phones can access the internet, they can get access to those services if you allow them with the call manager. So they say that's the only requirements. The phone should not be able to access, for instance, the data VLAN, nor the data VLAN's the phone, or the server VLAN, or anything like that. Wait a sec. Did it say the server VLAN? That's not good. I think I can't remember if I put the call manager server on the server VLAN or if I put it on. I'm going to have to modify that. I'm going to modify that on. Let me open my spreadsheet. I've got the client voice over IP. Oh, okay. No. Good. So I put the call manager server here on the data VLAN because I was thinking if that's on the server VLAN, then we have to, of course, allow the phones to access their call manager server. But it's there. So we're good. So these requirements will stand, and so they can access the internet. So here's the thought we have to have. So first thing we have to do. In our access list, remember access lists, let's just say we've got access list 100, an extended access list. We have to put what it's allowed to access, some permit statements of what it's allowed to access first, which is the corporate office. But then I need to deny it from everything else. We've got some deny to say, don't let it access the server VLAN. Don't let it access the data VLAN or these VLANs over there. Those other subnets, I should be to be more specific. But then after I've blocked those, see, this is the one that confuses most people. I then have to allow the internet. And what is the internet? Everything. It's every IP address. So I'm just kind of thinking through the order here of this access list. I need to say here's what's allowed, then a small section of here's what's denied, but then a large section of, well, just allow everything else. So if we translate this in access list language, well, rather than theorizing about it, let's just do it. I'm going to jump up here to okay, now where are these going to be put? Well, let's put them on switch 1. That's really our routing for the network. That's what allows the VLANs to route, sends it over here to our internet router. So this is the nice logical place to do that. So bring up a console connection there. Just size everything just right. Just so. All right. Okay, so I'm on switch 1. Man, if you guys could be in my head for a moment, you know that moment of silence right there? My brain just went 50 directions. I was like, oh, I found a new plugin for Notepad++. I want to show you. But I'm not going to do that now. Self-control, Jeremy. So I'm going to go into switch 1. Let's do a show IP interface brief. Just to, again, always reorient yourself. So I've got right there, VLAN 64. Let's just double verify. Show run interface VLAN 64. There it is. We've got our voice VLAN. We've got it enabled for OSPF. We know that that's running okay. So let's create our restrictions. So I know I in my slide I said let's use access list 100, but I don't use numbered access lists except where I absolutely have to because maybe the syntax doesn't let you use a named access list. I always use a named access list because it's so much easier to follow. So instead of typing access list, I type in IP access list. And instead of using a number, I actually type in extended to tell it it's an extended access list instead of remembering the ranges are 1 through 99 and 100 through 199 and all of that. So I'm going to say the name of the access list, let's just say, is VLAN 64 underscore ACL. Access control list. So I hit enter. I'm now in my named access list mode, right? So going back to the requirements, it said that they should only be able to access the corporate voice subnet, 10.1.1.0/24, over at the corporate office, and the internet. So let's do the restriction or the permission first. I'm going to say permit. Now, what protocol? Is it TCP? Is it UDP? Well, it didn't say what protocol. Down here, right here, look at that. We've got TCP ports 21, 80, and 443. But up here it just says allow them access. So we can assume that's full access. So going back to our syntax here, full access is IP. Permit IP, that's everything. TCP, UDP, everything. It's everything is permitted. So it says, okay, from what source? And I have to emphasize, access list, use your question mark. You can always feel when you're working with somebody new. Like I'm actually training a guy right now personally for my company and in the Cisco world. And I always do a join me session anytime he's configuring something. I don't know. Have you guys heard of join me? See, another tangent. There it is. Do join.me. This website, oh my goodness, it's actually run by LogMeIn, who's a amazing competitor to GoToMyPC. But this is for your friends, family, anything. It's free, without any client installing or anything like that. You know, the remote guy can just click on share their screen. You type in the number that they'll get a little number on the top of their screen. You type in the number and bam, you're sharing a screen. So I'm watching him, and he was configuring. What was this? Yesterday? It was just yesterday. He was setting up. Oh no, we were just finding a MAC address on a switch. And I said, because there was actually a rogue DHCP server at one of the sites, and I said, okay, find out what IP it is, find its MAC address. Okay, now go to the switch and find what port that MAC address is connected to. And I was watching him type, and he was going, he was doing this. He was like, show MAC enter, and it was like invalid, and then he'd try it again, show, and I said, use your question mark, man. I was like, you got to, do show question mark. What are you looking for? Look at the list. So same thing here. Permit, IP, always. I know the syntax off the top of my head, but I always type in the question mark just so I know that I'm on the straight and narrow path. So we've got the, okay, what are the source IP addresses? Now, you might have some thoughts on this. Some of you might say, well, we can go and we can type in the subnet. We can do 10.1.64.0 with a wildcard mask of 0000255, and that is absolutely valid, and it would work. It's perfect. But I always think when I create access lists, just for ease of use, I always think, okay, where's this going to be applied? Where am I setting this restriction? And it's eventually going to be, we've got our switch 1 interface VLAN 64 is where we're at. That's going to be the routed interface. That's the 10.1.64.1/24. That's all of the phone's default gateway. They go into that interface, and I'm already thinking of direction, into that interface before they can access anything. So that's going to be where I'm applying my restriction. So if I apply, again, it's like chess. You have to think 2 steps ahead. Think 2 steps ahead with me. Applying the ACL right here on this interface means that it's only affecting people coming in on that VLAN, which are, now absolutely agree with myself in saying it's only going to be these IP addresses, but a lot of times when you're creating access lists, it's just better to go simple and just say, you know what, permit anything. Any source, because I'm applying it to VLAN 64, so the only sources that can come in are going to be things on the 10.1.64 subnet. So why get all specific with it and type that in when I could just easily say, well, permit anything coming in, any source. And it says, okay, well, what destination? So again, I'm saying here's what they're allowed to access. The destination, now I need to be a little more specific. 10.1.1.0 wildcard 0000255. Now you can get into, DSCP quality of service and fragments and blah, blah, blah. You can log results and all of that, but we're just going core access list. You don't need to get too fancy here. I'll just hit enter, and there's my first statement. So now when I do a show access list, got my VLAN ACL, it automatically puts sequence number 10. That's the first sequence. Permit anything, any protocol from any source on this interface accessing the corporate VLAN subnet, which is that's what they said they should have access to. Now it says everything else is restricted, meaning, okay, I need to give them access to the internet. So, well, I'm taking both of those things in one hand. I say, okay, everything else is restricted, meaning the corporate offices. I shouldn't be able to get to the data VLAN here. I shouldn't be able to get to the server VLAN here, or any of the VLANs other than the voice VLANs over here. So those should all be restricted, but they should still be able to access the internet. So let's think that through. First off, internet access. Let me translate that into access list language. Permit IP any source, any destination. That's how you allow access to the internet, right? Because the internet's everything. But we have to say deny, but we can't just put that next. We can't go here in our ACL and do, permit IP any, because then you look here, it's like, okay, we've got an ACL that says, okay, if any source accesses this, they're allowed, and if anybody accesses anything else, they're allowed to. That's a worthless access list. So let's yank that line out of there, get sequence 20 out of there. So before we do that, before we allow internet access, we have to have a deny statement. And in my mind, the deny statement should encompass all of the other subnets that exist here. Let me just clear that off. All of the other subnets that exist at this branch office. Now, the common ground is every single subnet here starts with the IP address 10.1, right? Every subnet here is 10. I mean, look back at our spreadsheet. Where are we? Right here. All of our subnets. You see the corporate office is 10.1.0 through 63, and then all our branch offices are 10.1. So you see the common ground, right? So if I deny that, that will deny them access to all of the other VLAN subnets. So let's do that, and I'll talk through it. So I'm going to say now deny. It's automatically going to make it sequence 20. So I'll say deny IP, deny everything from any source, again in VLAN 64, any source to 10.1.0.0 with a wildcard mask of 0.0.255.255. Enter. Look at that action. We've got 10.100.00255. Now again, remember what that wildcard mask means. When I say 10.100 and 0.0.255.255, what I'm saying is I'm saying, look at this. This lines up to the first octet. So this is important. Look here. Anything with 10. Look at this second octet. That's important too. So deny 10.1. That we've got to make sure of that. And then the 255 say, I don't care. I don't care. So if it's 10.1. anything, deny it. Make sense? Now that's great, but remember where we're going here. If I just left it like this, I would say, okay, they can access the corporate subnet, or I should say the corporate voice VLAN, right? Sequence 10. Everything else is denied in my Nugget Labs offices. Because they all start with 10.1. Now, if down the road we add another office and it's not 10.1, then yes, we would have to come update our access list to include those deny statements as well. But that's not in our scenario yet. So if I just left it like this, remember what's at the bottom of every access list. Deny everything. So it would say allow this, deny that, and then deny everything else, which would include our internet access. So one more line here. Permit IP any. Look at that. Now we've got allow the corporate voice, deny all other corporate subnets, but then allow everything else. And this thing's processed in order. So when a voice VLAN, a voice phone will say sends a packet, it's going to say, are you accessing this? If so, you're allowed. Okay, nope, not that. Are you accessing this? Because if so, you're denied. Nope, not that. Okay, then you're allowed. Period. You must be surfing the web or doing something else. You can feel free to go on through. Good. So we've got Nugget VLAN 64 should be able to access this. Okay, so let's apply it. Last piece is now to apply it. And anytime I am teaching people how to apply access, this is one of the most critical steps right here. I always tell them to be the router. Like because you now have to apply this in a specific direction, inbound or outbound. Okay, and I always, right here is our router. I always have people, and this is when I'm talking to somebody in person, I have them stand up. This is my visual of the person. Stand up and stick out your arms, right? Your arms, you are the router. This is you. You are the router with an access list or the layer 3 switch. Your arms represent interfaces. This is interface VLAN 64. This maybe is your link right here to the internet. I'll just put internet. Technically it's fast Ethernet 1/15, right? But we'll just say it's the internet, or 2/15. I can't remember. So when we're applying this access list, we now have ACL. What was it called? ACL VLAN 64 ACL. That's the name of it. So I'm going to be, as I am the router, I'm going to apply this as it's coming in my left arm on VLAN 64. So as packets, as IP phones are coming in right here, it will be applied. Now a lot of people get hung up on this, saying, well, could you apply that same ACL as it goes out this interface? And the answer is yes, you could. Same thing, you could also apply it. No, actually, you couldn't. No, actually, no. I take that back. Well, we could apply it out that interface, but then we'd have to apply it out all the other VLAN interfaces. VLAN 66, VLAN 68, to make sure those restrictions are applied. So the rule of thumb, and this is, if you're exam studying, the rule of thumb from Cisco is extended ACLs, which is what we're configuring right now. It's always best to apply them as close to the source as possible, which is this is what we're doing as they're coming in VLAN 64. So let's go back here. Exit out of our named access list mode. I've got the access list ready, so let's go under interface VLAN 64, and I'll do IP access group. That's how you apply it, IP access group, and I'll set up VLAN 64 ACL, and then the direction in. Do a verification on that, and there it is. We've got this being filtered inbound on that interface. Good. Okay, so I went ahead and recorded all of our answers so far into the answer key for creating this VLAN 64. I'm not going to spend as much time explaining each piece as I go through the rest of these, just because it's going to become familiar to you. But I'm telling you, if you're like me, I can't wait to get to the testing to test. I'm like, before I even go on to the next restriction, I want to make sure VLAN 64 is working and make sure I did everything right before I go any further. So let's jump down to the testing, and you can see we've got from PC1, which should be on VLAN 64, and let's verify all that. But that should be from the previous part of this lab. That's our test device. We're going to try some pings to make sure everything is working okay. So let's jump back over to here. Bring up our, wrong button, console. On PC1, all right, there we go. Let's just show IP interface brief. I want to make sure he is indeed, yep, he is. He's got that DHCP address from the previous part of this. So I'm going to just ping the default gateway, make sure whoa, wait a sec here. Look at that. Ping the internet. Okay, interesting. What's going on here? Let's think through it. We've got pings to the default gateway, which are coming back with this. And maybe you haven't seen these before. Anyone know what the U's mean? It's actually an ICMP unreachable message. The only reason you get that is because an access, well, I shouldn't say the only, but the primary reason you get that is because an access list is blocking your traffic. The router is actually replying and saying, no, you are not allowed. So it looks like we've got a little issue. I'm thinking, if it's an issue at all, but think it through with me. We've got the access. Let's go back to switch 1 and do a show access list. We've got an access list here that says, okay, permit that subnet, which is fine. We've got deny any source going to 10.1. anything. Well, whoa, wait a sec. That means we're not able to ping the default gateway because that's 10.1. something. And you notice the matches there on our access list. They're coming in on that ping right there. It says, 11 matches coming in on that 10.1.64.1 because it matches. But then I went ahead and pinged the internet, and it went through. Now, here's the funny thing. I kind of did this on purpose, because this is actually a big point of confusion for a lot of people when it gets to access this. They go, well, wait a sec. If you can't even reach your default gateway, then how are you getting to the internet? How are you, why did this succeed if you can't even get to your default gateway? Well, think it through with me. When we're setting this up, I mean, yes, the PC, this guy is on VLAN 64. Hang on, let me clear this off. That PC I just circled there is on VLAN 64, and he has to go through his default gateway, which is at 64.1, which is restricted, to reach the internet. But remember, think about the packets. When this guy sends a packet, if I do a ping to 4.2.2.2, right there, in the packet, the destination IP address is 4.2.2.2. The source IP address is 10.64. No, 10.1.64.10, which is his IP address. So when it comes up here, the access list is saying, okay, you're going to here, is that restricted? No, it's not, so let's allow that through. He's never actually saying I need to go to a destination IP address of the default gateway. Well, how does he get there then? MAC address, right? Remember that? Source and destination MAC address. He knows the MAC address for that gateway. Our packets succeed no problem without ACL, so he gets the MAC address of that gateway. So he's able to send it to the MAC address of this with this IP address, which passes the access list just fine. But now wait a sec. We'll come back to our testing phase. It says that the pings to the default gateway should succeed. Okay, so that means we need to make a modification in order. I mean, if the exam is saying this, maybe the exam didn't say that it needed access to his default gateway, and yet the testing for the exam said it should succeed. Then that should implicitly say to us, okay, then we need to allow access to that subnet. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to switch 1. There's our ACL. Now I need to squeeze that in between these two statements, right? I've got to permit that to the corporate, but before I get to the deny all the 10.1, then I need to make sure I squeeze something in. So let's do IP access list extended. And I'll just do this, paste it in, access ACL, and let's do sequence 15, which squeezes it right between these two sequence numbers. Will be a permit IP from any source to 10.1.64.0. So I'm essentially allowing the subnet access to the subnet, if that makes sense, or access to the gateway that way, and do that. So let's now take a look. I got my show access list. Let's go to PC1, hit the up arrow twice, and whew, look at that. Pings succeed very quickly, and now we're getting the matches right here on that ping message that I sent through. So excellent. We're now seeing that. So going back to the testing, I'm glad we did that before we did all the rest of them, because you want to make sure to squeeze that in. And let me squeeze that in. I'm thinking of squeezing in. Squeeze that in right here. Paste. There we go. In our answer key. So we've got that in place. We're now able to ping our default gateway. Let's move on to the next one. So should succeed. Okay, the data VLAN gateway should fail. So let's try that. So I'm gonna jump over here, PC1, do a ping to that 66.1. Sure enough, we are failing, and those U's tell me it's the access list. By the way, you can turn that off, and that way a hacker doesn't even know that there's an access list denying them. They may think, well, that IP address might not be there. Those are called IP ICMP unreachable. So you can turn those off if you want to. But for our testing, it's good because we know the access list is actually blocking it, and I should see the count on this deny statement go up, and I do. So we've got PC1. Okay, so what else? We've got the data VLAN should fail. The corporate voice VLAN gateway should succeed. Whoop. I don't know why Acrobat is doing this to me. Every time, it really did copy, but it gives me an error. So I'm going to do a ping to 10.1.1.1. That'll go across the WAN and succeed. Good. So we are getting that. So let's go back here. And now we should have some matches up on that first one. We do. So corporate voice VLAN is successful. And then finally, the internet should succeed as well. And we know that will because we've already tried that. And sure enough, and we've got our I was like, it should go up. But actually, it's not going up. And the reason why is just the way the router caches a lot of the routing and how it logs to the access list. By default, it actually logs kind of per session, if you will. It doesn't log every single match to this. You can dig deeper into that if you want to, but it's working. And we know it's because of this. If I took that out, it wouldn't work. How's that? I will say a lot of people do add a deny IP any at the bottom of their access list just for logging purposes, so they're able to see matches when something's denied. Because of the implicit deny, you can't actually see that. Okay, good. So we've got one set is successful, and then one set of tests are successful. So let's now look at the data VLAN. Data VLAN should only be able to access, again, all else is restricted. We've got the domain controller at this IP address, domain controller at this IP address, and then we've got the web server at this IP address only on these specific ports. And then, of course, we've got the internet that should be allowed access to. So let's go into that config. Bring the switch back up. Now we're talking the data VLAN. So we've got the voice VLAN squared away. So let's do a show run interface VLAN 66. That's our data VLAN. Good. No access list at all. So let's go in under a similar pretense and do IP access list extended VLAN 66 ACL. All right, let's just work through it. We've got the two servers, 68.6 and 7. It needs full access to. So that translates to me into permit. It's going to be IP, so full access, any source on the data VLAN, again, think about where we're applying it, VLAN 66, to the host, again, it's just going to be one IP address of 10.1.68.6, there we go, and that's it. 68.6, 68.7 is the second host, correct? 7, DC2. All right, so let's do a show IP access list. All right, so we've got those two permissions allowed. So now let's see the next one. It says we should be allowing access to the web server, but only on ports 21, 80, and 443. Or we could have also said FTP, HTTP, and HTTPS. So let's do that. I'll do permit, but now it's not IP. Now it's TCP. Those are TCP-based protocols. Permit from any source to the host, and this is going to be 68.8, I believe is what it said, right? Yep. So 68.8 is permitted, and this time, instead of just hitting the enter, if I hit the enter key, which is valid, I could press the enter key right here. That would allow all TCP access. It wouldn't allow UDP. It wouldn't allow ICMP, so you couldn't ping it, but it would allow all TCP access. So I got to filter that down. Let's use EQ to a specific port number. And you can hit the question mark and you get all the, old school port numbers like Gopher, and I haven't seen Gopher in a long time. So we'll say port number will be 21 for FTP. Enter. Hit the up arrow. Port number 80 for HTTPS, up arrow, and port number 443. Did I say that's HTTPS? The previous one was HTTP. So now I do a show access list, and now look at that. It even translated some of them to the friendly words that I could have typed in right there, which is port 21. That's fine. Let it do that. I like the numbers. So that now allows specifically those ports to that web server, filtering it. Now, after that, it says all else is restricted right there, except for the internet. So that's everything. So just like the voice VLAN, now that I've said on the corporate network, here's what's allowed, I now have to say, here's what's not allowed. And actually, my brain just checked out for a second because I thought, okay, whoa, wait a second. Let's not run into the same thing we did here. Let's look at the testing and say, oh, look at that right there. The data VLAN gateway, you seeing that, should succeed. We shouldn't be able to ping the voice gateway. That's restricted, but the data VLAN gateway should succeed. So that tells me, rather than failing and coming back, let's do it from the beginning. I need to squeeze a line in there that says permit IP from any source to the subnet 10.1.66.0 0000255. that will now allow it to ping its own gateway to make sure that the gateway is online. But now everything else should be restricted. See how these things can grow, right? Deny line 70. And you, by the way, when you're in here, you can type in line numbers if you want to, but it auto increments by 10. I could type in 70, but it does that by itself. Deny IP any source to 10.1.0.0 destination 00255.255. Good. These are the servers we're permitting, or the access we are permitting. I'm denying everything else, but the key is to the corporate network IP addresses, because the last statement in there is that, which allows access to everything else. Permit IP any, which is the full internet access that I'm allowing there. So now we have a complete access list that meets those requirements for the data VLAN right here. So let's apply that same way to the routed interface. Let's do interface VLAN 66 IP access group. We'll do VLAN 66 ACL inbound. Good. So our data VLAN should now be restricted from accessing, well, everything that's there. Now, here's the tough part, is we don't actually have these servers. Wait a second. We can. I would say, because I was going to say when we ping them, the way we're going to have to find out if it's working is if we see matches on this, because the pings will fail since those servers don't actually exist. But I just had a thought. Let's make them. I'll have to, maybe I'll add this to the initial lab. Let's go to the server. See, we've got a server. It's actually at show IP interface. I think it's the .50, right? Yep, right there. So here's how we make believe servers. Interface loopback 0. 10.1.68. 10.1.68. What are they? 68.6, 7, and 8. All right, so 68.6. 255, 255, 255, 255. The key is in that subnet mask, which says this is an individual IP address. There's no actual network to it. You can only use that subnet mask on loopback interfaces, primarily on loopback interfaces. But I'll go in and I'll say, okay, now we've got 66.7. Go under here and do 66. Or why am I saying 66? 68. 68.6, 68.7, 68.8. Good. Good. We've just created servers. So now we'll actually get successful replies to those IP addresses if everything's working okay. So let's do our testing. So I've got from PC2, which is on VLAN 66, I'm going to ping, first off, the voice gateway, which should fail. Because we're restricting access to that subnet. So let's jump back here to PC. Well, actually, PC1 is not. That is the voice VLAN. So let's go to PC2. He's the data VLAN. Good. So I'm just going to ping. I know this is kind of a step ahead, but I'm going to ping the default gateway just to make sure everything is working that way. Okay, good. And actually, that was one of our permissions, so we should now already see matches on our access list, and we do. We see them to that 66 subnet that we allowed access to. So PC2, let's do the pings it said to the voice VLAN, which I had it on my clipboard. Let's just hit the up arrow and do 64.1. And those are being denied. We don't have to check the matches because the U's immediately indicate that. It says go ahead and check the corporate, okay, wait a sec, voice gateway, corporate voice VLAN. So pinging across the WAN to their voice VLAN should also fail. I'll paste that in there. And it does. I'm seeing those failures right there. And so, again, going back here, we should now see our access list ticking up on this deny statement, and we do, which is good. Those are being denied. And then let's go down. So the internet DNS server should succeed. So let's give that a whirl. PC2, ping 4.2.2.2, and it does. We have success there. Good. Now it says access TCP port 80 for these 3 servers. And now I put the connection. Actually, I'm going to change this lab. The connection will timeout, fail, but access list should register hit on the corresponding entries. Actually, you know what? It will fail. Wait a sec. Wait a sec. I even have a because port. So first off, let me say this. How do you access TCP port 80? Well, that's using the telnet command. You can go in and say telnet to 10.1.68. We'll say 6 and hit the question mark, and one of the options it gives you is a port number. That will allow you to test and see if things connect. Now, I'm saying it will fail because, well, in the revised lab it won't, because this switch isn't going to respond, or not, sorry, not the switch, but this server right here, our make-believe server, isn't going to respond on port 80 unless I do this. IP HTTP server and IP HTTP secure server. Let's generate some encryption keys. There we go. Look at that. Good. So we now have a make-believe server, but FTP isn't going to work. But actually, we're not even testing FTP. Yeah, that's if we're doing. Yeah, this isn't an FTP server, so we won't be able to truly test port 21 to see if it connects. But we can actually register the hits on the access. Okay, let's do it. Let me do this. So let's do telnet to 6188. What am I saying? Telnet 10.1.68.6 on port 80. Enter. That's not what I was. Oh, there we go. I was thinking that's not as fast as I thought. So it's open. So that what that tells me is there was a connect message there. And let's go back and do a show access list. And look at that. We're registering hits on that entry. Now that's allowing everything to the .6 IP address. You might say, well, how do you get out of that? I mean, you can actually issue HTTP commands in here and all that. That'll give you a bad request and it'll hang up on you. Or you can use Control-Shift-6X to end the session. So let's hit the up arrow and change it to 7. I'm testing connections to that server on port 80. I don't know why. Maybe that's a GNS3 thing, why it takes that long. Usually web servers are very fast. So that's successful. I'm able to see now hits registering on the second statement right there. So now let's try to 8 on port 80. Open, and let's just jump back here because now that should isolate. Look at that, right on that www, because these we only allowed specific ports access, right? Or I can go back here. Let's kill that session and try 443 for the secure web server. Now look at that. Now I'm connected. It's immediate like, you're booted. But now I'll be able to see. Isn't this cool? I love it. Now I'm able to see connections on there. Now FTP won't work. It'll just hang there and time out because there's no. Well, no, it won't. It's just rejected because there is no FTP server at all. So it's saying, but it'll still register on the access list because at least it tried to go through. Good. This is awesome. So we've got VLAN 66, which is now tested. We're seeing the hits on the entries. Now let's move on to our last objective. This should be easy. Public Wi-Fi, VLAN, and private lab should only be able to access the internet. Period. That's all there is to it. So really, that should be 2 statements. So let's do that. All right. So let's bring that up. I've got actually it'll be 3 statements. So let's do this. Exit out of the interface, and I'll do. Actually, you know what? It'll be a lot easier if we just. This is how I do it in the real world. Is once I've got the base and I know the commands, I'll just come into Notepad, and I'll just use this as, for instance, a template. So let's paste this in here. We've got VLAN 60. What was it? 69, right? 69 and 70 that we're going to use. So we've got 69 ACL. We're going to permit. Well, this isn't allowed to access anything. So I'll allow them to access their default gateway, to ping the default gateway, because I've already looked ahead and the testing said to ping the default gateway and it should succeed. So I'm going to allow access to the gateway, deny access to everything else in the corporate subnets, 10.1.everything, and then permit anything else, which is the internet. So the only thing that VLAN 69, and let me add in VLAN 70 can access is their own gateway and the internet. All other corporate traffic will be restricted. Shoot down here, we've got our application. We've got VLAN 64 and 66. Paste this in here, and we'll also have 69 and 70. 69 and 70. There we go on application. So we'll blast these two in there. Paste. Exit. And then, oh, where'd I go? There we go. 69 and 70. And paste. Exit. Good. So those should be applied. So the last piece is now to test. We're just going to do VLAN 69 because 70 was exactly the same configuration. It says moves PC1 into VLAN 69. So let's do that. I'm going to go to, well, let's look at our diagram. So PC1 is on switch 2. Got to bring up a connection there. Show VLAN switch. We've got nothing currently in VLAN 69. So let's go the client. It's currently in 64. That was our test client. So let's do interface fast Ethernet 1/2, and we'll do switch port access VLAN 69, and then exit out. Oh, and let's do a. Oh, wait a sec. I'm on the wrong device. So we've got switch 2, which we just moved him now to VLAN 69. He's hanging out there. So now I need to go to PC1, who still has an IP address from VLAN 64. It's going to interface FA0/0 and do a shut. And that will ditch that IP address. That's why it's kind of hanging there. And do a no shut. Show IP interface brief. And we did configure a DHCP pool for VLAN 69, so good, there we go. We've got an IP address now from VLAN 69 that's been assigned. That's the first IP address. So now, for our testing, ping the default gateway. Paste that in there. And that succeeds, good. Ping the data VLAN, that should fail, because we shouldn't be allowed access to anything else, 66.1. Unreachable. Sure enough, it's fail. We've got ping the corporate voice VLAN, just another random test that we can do to make sure everything is truly being blocked. It fails, good. And then ping the internet DNS server, because that should be the only thing that we're really allowed access to. Ping 4.2.2.2, and it succeeds, good. Let's go back to our access list. And just make sure that we are truly getting matches on that, and we are. Check it out. VLAN 69, 15, 22, and 12. Awesome. I know as I'm going through this lab, I'm just picking up the pace and going, go, 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 just because I know I'm kind of cramming a lot of stuff in here. But that will bring us to a kind of a full circle on this lab, to where we now have full DHCP, we have full access lists to meet the corporate objectives of allowing specific things to access only other specific things, and we've got a hummin' Nugget Labs branch office. Sweet. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.